everybody. Daniel Press back again. I want to show you guys an open source tool. I launched it this morning. Tell me if you've been here. So some engineers are planning your system, and they say, you know, we'd like you to make a interface that shows a list of the status of this big long list of things. These are all like digital sensors, let's say. These are inputs. So these are particular ones are outputs, but we'll call them input for the moment. And you're like, okay, well, I can make a cluster of Boolean in LabVIEW and put it on my HMI, and that would be great. But who wants to type all that? Or copy and paste each one of those things individually and put them into a label. So let's copy the entire bunch of these things just in Excel and run the tool. So what this tool is going to allow you to do is create a cluster of Boolean in whatever cluster style you've got, in whatever Boolean style you've got. It actually traverses, finds all the Booleans you've got, and there's a way to, if you have your own set of controls, you can feed that in. And then if you paste these, well, you know, we can change this to inputs, and you hit create cluster, and now I have a cluster of Booleans with all those lines all done for me. Right? Gotta love it. And like I said, this is open source. This is a starting point. Immediately you guys are all thinking, well, how do I make a cluster of digital numbers, or how do I make a cluster of various different data types, right? Well, that's why we implemented it as a class. So when you go to the repository for this, you will get all this code, you will get this class. Feel free to override any methods. The methods are broken down to do the thing where it lists all the styles of the different types of controls that you want to deal with. In this case, it's listing Booleans. Feel free to list other data types. So we'll just take the remaining time here and just do what I was saying to do in the previous talk, which is look at the code. All right, so a couple of little things I want to, while it's in running mode here, is you can look at the graphically represented Booleans, or you can grab them by their name. So this includes both like the built-in styles from, I'll call it the legacy versions of LabVIEW, in addition to the newer ones, which is the Silver and the NXG. They're handled in a different way in the scripting world. So you can select them by name, or you can click on them in the list here. And of course, if you scroll the name, it scrolls the list, you know. So a couple of little fun UI things that even if you have no use for this toolkit, maybe you want to know how I did this, right? You can find out because it's going to be open source. Well, it already is open source. It's actually available right now. So let's stop that and take a look at the code. The code is intentionally, hopefully, not too intimidating. One loop, event structure. I've got a little bit of setup here going on to just get things into a state where I want them to be. This gets the lists, the two lists of things, the clusters and the Booleans. And for the most part, we're just saving our list of cluster styles just for the user interface to make it a little easier to have that little interaction going on. And the bottom line is, there's not really much to it other than, you know, surfing around those selections, and then when you hit the generate button, we're going to generate. Hey Norm, I could use that tool too. Oh my God! All right. Yeah. So we've got basically the action all happens when you hit the generate button, right? So you're going to parse that whole string. Which, by the way, if you look in here, and let's say you've got something different, fine, override this method. That's what it's for. If you put a multi-line string in here, it's going to go ahead and replace tabs with spaces. Anybody have any idea why I would want that? Well, if I wanted to select, let's say I've got like numbering that I also want as part of my label for my Boolean, and I grab 2 columns of Excel data, It doesn't have to be Excel. It could be just any text, whatever. But if you've got something, when you paste that into LabVIEW, the columns will be separated by a tab character. But you may not want the tab character on your string. So when you paste that in, this is going to deal with replacing that tab with a space. And like I said, that is a method right there. Parse label string, right? And you can override that to your heart's content with whatever you've got. As long as you end up with a list, a string array, the generate code will act on it. Okay, so that gets fed in. Then we have to kind of create a host control, because at the end we're going to end up with a control. You can declare it as a type def or just a control. You have to create that. Then you've got to go ahead and create a cluster. And then you've got to give that cluster some style. Like you can change the font. I'll get into that in a second if we got time. And then you got to run into your loop, create all your Booleans, and give them a style. Thank you. For the 1 minute left, we will spend showing the one little extra feature. It took it one little extra mile here. In that you can see I could choose my style of cluster, I can choose my style of Boolean, but I can also choose a font. And it's going to go ahead and figure out all the fonts that you've got. So you can, whatever your company standard is or your user interface standard, choose that font. Go ahead and select that, choose your font size. And then these little adjustments here, because depending on which Boolean you select and which font you select, the label positioning needs a little help to get that offset just right so that it lines up on the proper side of your control where you want it. So there you go. So like here I've got a different style Boolean, I've got my labels. So that's the tool. Let me, before time runs out, we'll show the big old QR code. That'll get you to the repository. All done.
A special thanks goes out to Kevin Shirey, Quentin Q. Aldridge, Mark Balla, and Jeff DeVore for their help in filming. And of course, this GDevCon NA 2023 wouldn't be possible without all of our sponsors. Thanks.